Dr. Jamil. I think it's important for us, just as a sweeping note about the changes in India from the Congress Party and the politics. At least one can say that the Congress Party was looking toward a more progressive outlook, aligning itself with the non-aligned movement at the time, was supportive of many of the struggles in the Southern Hemisphere. And now we have almost a total shift, 180-degree in the opposite direction with the PGP party. And we could see the alliances that the Modi government has struck. And because I do a lot of work also on the Israel-Palestine front, that one of the primary supporters of the current PGP party is, again, Israel, both in terms of military support, technology cooperation, as well as support here in the United States, where we see some of that support even when Modi came to his visit in the United States. The welcome that was given to him by certain support of the pro-Israel lobby in this country was also something to have been witnessed. It's really a pleasure for us to have our next speaker with us. Shehla Rashid Chora is a research scholar at the Center for the Study of Law and Governance at Johar Nehru University in New Delhi. Shehla was the vice president of the Johar Nehru Student Union in 2005 to 2015-2016 and has emerged as a prominent face of the student youth movement in India. She's a member of the All India Students Association and is a founding member of the National Campaign Against Mob Lynching, an important aspect of the current response to the many cases of lynching that are taking place in contemporary India. So it's a pleasure to have Shehla. Welcome her to the microphone.
Hello everyone, good afternoon. Please have me on. So good afternoon everyone. Today, 5th October, marks 1 month of the brutal murder of Gauri Lankesh. I don't know how many of you have heard about the murder, but Gauri Lankesh was a journalist who was working in India, the state of Karnataka, if you've heard of it, or Bangalore, the city. That's where she lived. And 1 month ago, that is on 5th September, she was brutally shot dead at her residence, just outside of her house, by 3 armed assassins, bike-borne armed assassins. And the murder was it was seen as being the 4th in a series of murders of rationalists in India. The first being Dabholkar, who was murdered in 2014. Who was murdered in 2014 before the Modi government came to power, and after that, several other rationalists were murdered. Govind Pansare, Narendra Dabholkar, and Gauri Lankesh's murder is seen as being the latest in that series. And even though the killers have not been found, the investigation is very slow. But it doesn't take one to be a political analyst to know who has murdered Gauri Lankesh, because immediately after her murder, like hours into her murder, there were celebrations on Twitter by the right-wing trolls. So they made no secret of who's benefiting from the murder. So that's what we are looking at, and on the 5th of October, that just got over in India. People in Delhi, which is the city where I live currently, marched on the streets demanding justice for Gauri Lankesh. However, if one were to sort of go back 70 years and then see where it all began, I mean, we could probably trace all of this to the murder of Gandhi. And it is no secret that Gandhi was murdered by people, who are in power in India today. We are talking about Nathuram Godse, who was a member of the Hindu Mahasabha, And the Hindu Mahasabha is one of the several organizations which are part of the Sangh Parivar, which is like an umbrella organization of many right-wing Hindutva groups. And I would use the term Hindutva rather than Hindu groups, because these aren't really Hindu groups. This is just a perverted distortion of Hinduism that we see in Hindutva groups. I mean, just as Islam is to Islamism what Hindu is to Hindutva. So I would like to make that distinction very clear. And thank you so much. And what we see is that Islamophobia in India, at least, I mean, whatever I'm going to say is in the context of India, of course, because I don't have much exposure to what's happening outside. It comes in combinations. I mean, that's the interesting bit about it. It's never only Islamophobia. It comes in combinations, such as Islamophobia and misogyny. Now, if some of you are doing research on that, you can go to my Twitter page and see all the comments below. Like, whatever, I could be sharing a song on YouTube. You know, I could be sharing a YouTube link to a song, and all the comments that you see is, "You bloody Islamist bitch." So it's Islamophobia and misogyny. It's not alone. I mean, we have to understand that bit about it, because that leads to something really interesting. It's Islamophobia and anti-Semitism. I mean, what you have up in the White House right now. It's Islamophobia and homophobia. It's Islamophobia and certain other things. So, you know, it would be really wrong to find fault with the aggressor, with the victim rather than the aggressor, because that kind of, in a way, amounts to victim blaming. I mean, sure, I mean, we can have criticisms of Islam, Muslims should have self-criticisms of Islam, etc., etc., all that is fine. But to say that Islamophobia arises because of certain things is problematic, because there are very good religions, to use the term good religions, very self-consciously. Say Sikhism, for example. I mean, Sikhism is it's born out of a combination of several religions that were there in the Indian subcontinent. It took the good parts of all religions and, you know, made that into a religion. And we have seen one of the worst genocides in India has been against the Sikh community. I mean, in Delhi, in the very city that I live in, 1994, Sikhs were brutally butchered on the streets of Delhi. So, you know, finding the cause of all these phobias, so-called, with the victim is counterproductive, because really we have to find faults with the aggressor. Like, these are all economic ideologies of hate, be it Islamophobia or anti-Semitism or homophobia or Islamophobia. I would put them all in one bracket, or misogyny, whatever. Why I call these economic ideologies of hate is because all of these ideologies, or all of these, you know, ideologies of hate, really, they are usually, you know, they flourish in a moment of economic crisis. When the governments, they've made a mess of the economy. I mean, I'm talking, even if we speak in a global sense, they've made mess of the world. They've made mess of the environment. We've had wars and conquest all along. And what happens then is that you can't control the situation back home. I mean, especially if I were to sort of focus, if I were to limit myself to the third world countries, because that's where I'm speaking, that's the you know, vantage point that I'm speaking from. In India right now, the domestic government doesn't have control on inflation. It can't control price rise. It has nothing to say or do about unemployment. It has nothing to say or do about education, the situation that are, you know, basic rights are in. I mean, let's forget rights. I mean, basic amenities. You don't have water, you don't have electricity in many of the places. And the government has completely failed on those fronts. This is happening because the economic and political sovereignty has been already surrendered to international monetary organizations, which really dictate the agenda. I mean, the international monetary organizations dictate how much you're going to spend on education, how much you're going to spend on health, right? And that's why the next generation, you don't have education. You know, you don't have people who have jobs, who have high-paying jobs. You have utter economic crisis. You have bad business models generating bad jobs. And in this situation of economic crisis, when the government has to get rid of any sort of accountability, the easiest thing to do is direct their hatred or attention towards a certain community, which in our case happens to be Muslims. But if we think about it historically, I mean, in Nazi Germany, for example, it was the Jews. That was, I mean, what happens with any fascist government is they create an economic ideology out of communal hatred, as in, we don't have jobs because the IMF did this, we don't have jobs because the World Bank put these conditions, no, we don't have jobs because Muslims take it. Like, that's the running narrative that Muslims, so it's, you know, in India, you must have heard about all these beef lynchings. It's never just beef, it's beef, it's love jihad, what they call, you know, basically a stigmatization of interfaith marriage. It's several other things, you know, that form part of this cocktail. So again, it's a mix of misogyny and Islamophobia and McCarthyism and whatever else you can think of, sort of bundled into one whole, and then, you know, mobilized for violent purposes. Dr. Jamil spoke about it in a lot of detail. I mean, Ayodhya, I would beg to differ. It's not the epicenter of hate. I mean, that's not where it really started from. I mean, that was made the focus, and, you know, people were mobilized from throughout the country to get one brick per home, one brick per Hindu to Ayodhya. And the, you know, the interesting bit is that even at the height of the Ayodhya mobilizations, even at the height of the Ram Mandir movement, UP did not vote BJP. The state of Uttar Pradesh did not vote BJP. But now we are at a situation where BJP just got 400 plus seats, and a chief minister, Yogi Adityanath, who openly, you know, advocates violence against Muslims. And I mean, I don't even want to repeat the kind of things that he says should be done to Muslim women. And he's the chief minister. So that is the situation that we are looking at. And I completely agree with Dr. Jamil when he says that socially, India has not been communalized. Socially, it has not been broken down. But politically, the polity has definitely been communalized a lot. I would like to, sort of just before I start my presentation, I'd like to just point out one thing. I mean, I am not an expert, I must admit, I'm not an expert. I've never approached the subject of Islamophobia academically. But I speak more as a practitioner, I speak as an activist. And to my mind, what I feel has happened is that, you know, in order to justify conquest, you always have to invent a narrative of narrative of inferiority. I guess that has happened throughout human history. And when the Britishers had to invade India, I mean, the running narrative was that these people are backward. Like, backwardness was the sort of justification for conquest. And in case of, you know, in case of the Arab world, it's obviously the Orientalist gaze, and then trying to say that Muslims are regressive, etc., etc. So I think that Islamophobia is also, you know, it's also an ideology that has been generated, that has been created in order to sort of justify all the Gulf wars and all the oil wars and all the conquest and destruction that we see in the Middle East today. I mean, part of it is also that. But however, I mean, it definitely gets reflected in India as well. It definitely gets reflected everywhere else, because you mentioned Fox. I mean, that's what drives the narrative. And it may not, in India, in other countries, it may not be Fox, but it will be channels owned by the same media tycoons. It will be Rupert Murdoch-owned channels and their subsidiaries, which will instigate this kind of, you know, violence in other countries. And right now, if we look at the Rohingya crisis, what's happening is that the Indian media, in a completely unthinking, unsubstantiated manner, they're trying to say that the Rohingyas are terrorists. You know, the most persecuted community on earth is being portrayed as terrorists at a time when we are trying to say that our country should, you know, should intervene in the crisis, should intervene on behalf of the Rohingyas, and should give shelter to people who are fleeing the genocide right now. And at the same time, when we are making that demand, in order to weaken that demand, what's happening is our media, in a completely unsubstantiated manner, is showing that the Rohingyas are terrorists. And you know, that this is how these media conglomerates work. This is how they perpetuate a single line of thought, you know, from America to, and you know, I guess that's what kind of explains singularly owned media houses from the east to the west. So of course there'll be a single narrative that will be perpetuated or perpetrated throughout. The focus of my presentation today is mainstream media and representation of Muslims. Of course, I'm talking in the Indian context. Before the 9th of February 2016, frankly, I did not experience Islamophobia in any concrete sense. So I did not know that Islamophobia exists. And it was only after 9th February 2016, which is when the crisis at our university began. I'm sure many of you know about it because we received statements of solidarity from UC Berkeley, so thank you for that. It meant a lot at that time. The international solidarity just meant a lot. There was a crackdown on our university when the elected student union president was arrested, and sedition cases were put on several students because there had been a program in the university which questioned the death penalty given to a convicted, Afzal Guru, a Kashmiri convicted in the Parliament attack case. So Afzal Guru was hanged on the 9th of February 2013, if I'm not mistaken. And so on 9th February 2016, there was a program against death penalty, and there was a program questioning the whole process of trial, etc. And this followed a massive crackdown on JNU students. But before I go into the mainstream media representations and whatever cocktails were presented to people at that time, I just want to point out that what was happening at the 9th February, during the 9th February crisis, I mean, we call it the 9th February crisis or the sedition row, whichever. What was happening is that one of the big businessmen in India, Vijay Mallya, I don't know how many of you have heard of him. He's the owner of Kingfisher Airlines, and he had run up a debt of rupees 6,000 crore, and this he owed to the public banks, public sector banks. And these public sector banks, it was a 17-bank consortium, they had approached the court saying that this person might try to flee the country, so please ensure that he doesn't go out of the country. However, he was given a safe passage. He's in the UK, he's been enjoying his time ever since. So I feel at one level that the JNU crisis was also invented as a red herring to take attention away from this flamboyant businessman who was trying to flee the country at that time. Because no one was asking about him fleeing with taxpayer money, whereas the mainstream media were pointing fingers at our university, Jawaharlal Nehru University, saying that these people study on taxpayer money, and then they questioned the death penalty given to terrorists, etc., etc. So that's the context to this whole thing. So I'll briefly start with my presentation. Actually, it's not brief. So the person that you see in the picture is Umar Khalid. He is a PhD final year student at Jawaharlal Nehru University. He was one of the people who were arrested at that time. So he was not in the student union, but he was one of the organizers of the program that questioned the death penalty. And he was arrested. I mean, he was arrested along with another person, Anirban. So in all, there were three guys who were arrested. One was Kanhaiya, he was the elected student union president. The second was Umar Khalid. The third was Anirban. So Umar and Anirban were arrested together. As some of you may guess from the name itself, Umar is Muslim by background, and Anirban and Kanhaiya are non-Muslims, Hindus, whatever. And so what, I'm just laughing at these terms because all of them are self-proclaimed atheists, and they've been saying that we have nothing to do with Hinduism or Islam. But of course, I mean, you may want to shrug off your identity, but it just sticks to you. I mean, especially a Muslim identity, you just can't shrug it off. So Umar Khalid, a self-proclaimed atheist, communist, activist, he is shown as, I mean, when he was not arrested yet, I mean, the police were looking for him. He was shown, this is NewsX. So another thing, I'm going to focus in my presentation only on mainstream media because of course there is no dearth of fake news websites and portals and Twitter handles, but I'm going to just focus on mainstream media to show, I mean, how less of accountability exists right now. So this is NewsX. It's a mainstream media house, and it says that JNU student Umar Khalid is a JEM sympathizer. Now JEM is a it stands for Jaish-e-Mohammed, which is a which is labeled as a terrorist outfit in India. It's Pakistan based, and if you see the text below sympathizer, it says sources to NewsX. So sources have said to NewsX that Umar Khalid is a Jaish-e-Mohammed sympathizer, and of course sympathizer is something so vague that you don't have to prove it in a court of law. And what you're doing here is you are, just because his name is Umar, it's very convenient to label him a sympathizer of Islamist terror outfits. So there is just no accountability. I mean, sources, who are these sources? We don't know. IB report to MHA. So IB is Intelligence Bureau. It's one of the Indian states' intelligence agencies to Ministry of Home Affairs. So IB is under MHA. So the Ministry of Home Affairs houses the Intelligence Bureau, which is a super secretive organization which doesn't have any accountability, because all you have to say is that the IB had this information, and where did the information come from? Basically nowhere. However, what happens in all of these cases that we are going to see is that the narrative that is, that you often see reproduced on fake news websites and, Twitter handles of right-wing trolls, that gets echoed on mainstream media. Now that's the worrying bit. So it's not just Twitter trolls and it's not just fake news websites and portals. What they say, the kind of things that they say, these are often picked up by the mainstream media. And so you can see that it is a continuum. It's not really a break. It is a continuum, and it's happening as per a singularly set agenda, that whatever imaginary nonsense that the right-wing trolls come up with, this at some point you will see reflected in the mainstream media. Now, there are many cases like these, when some random Muslim youth is picked up and then questioned and then branded as terrorist, all right, so later he may get acquitted. I mean, there are many cases of Muslim youth getting acquitted after 16 years. And they spend 16 years in jail. So, I mean, this is the kind of incarceration that we are talking about. Now, because Umar Khalid was a JNU student, because he was a self-proclaimed atheist, this narrative, became very unsustainable after a while. I mean, after a while, they couldn't really sustainably keep calling him an Islamist terrorist. The propaganda fell flat on its face, but I mean, the damage is done. Today, when Umar Khalid goes to watch a movie at cinema, which is next to our university, it's called the Priya Cinema, he was targeted there. I mean, there were people who recognized him, there were guys who recognized him, and they started screaming at him. And they started saying that you are anti-national, whatever that term means. And he had to leave the cinema. So it's having real impact on real people's real lives. So that's how concrete this is. I'm going to move on to the next slide. So again, the same thing. Fresh twist in Hunt for Khalid. So Hunt for Khalid, I mean, Hunt is also, the usage of the term is very interesting, because it's shown as if he's a wanted terrorist, whereas he was just, framed in a case of sedition, which is, which is routinely used to target. I mean, it's a colonial legacy, basically. I mean, it's a law that the British used it against us. Now we use it against our own people. So that's what's happening, really. This Hunt for Khalid hashtag, when you see a hashtag on mainstream media, when you see it on TV, that you can look it up online. I mean, you can go to Twitter and search for hashtag Hunt for Khalid. So in a way, this is very connected. I mean, this Twitter propaganda and TV propaganda is connected through this hashtag, I would say. So again, that's where you see the continuum. 38 calls made to J&K, 68 calls received. So J&K, as you know, is Jammu and Kashmir, which is the state that I come from. And there's been a long-standing conflict where India and Pakistan both claim Kashmir as their integral territory. Now, India claims that, Kashmir is an integral part of India. Fine. Why is it a problem if Umar Khalid makes 38 calls to J&K? I mean, first of all, he didn't. This was a figment of imagination of the TV editor. He did not make 38 calls to J&K. I mean, this was completely fictional. This was just made up nonsense. But however, even if he did, like, what's wrong in that? Like, you could make 38 calls to Haryana, you could make 38 calls to Karnataka, and it's not a problem. But you make 38 calls to J&K, and that's a problem. And, it's supposed to... So nothing is being said here, if you see this, nothing really is being said here, but a lot is being insinuated, in a sense. So he's also an Islamist, he's also a separatist, he's also a communist. So it's a whole cocktail of, things. I mean, even though he's not doing anything illegal, it's a whole cocktail of insinuations, I would say. So the person standing next to Umar is the guy called Anirban. And now I'm very sure that all of you have at some point heard of Umar but not heard of Anirban. So that's how, these people have been, that's how someone is singled out for targeting. I mean, they were arrested together. The charges against both are exactly the same. However, in mainstream media, I mean, Umar Khalid has been singled out as a target because he bears a Muslim name, but no one knows about Anirban. So that's what we see. And I mean, in the last slide, this hunt for Khalid, I mean, the use of this hashtag is also sort of dog whistle, where the TV reporters are actually calling out to the Twitter trolls and asking them to single out this person. I mean, there is no hunt for Anirban, and 6 other students were being sought by the police at that time. I mean, all of them, of course, bearing Hindu names. So none of them was targeted out and singled out in the same manner. Again, I mean, focusing on my university again, because that's where my experience of activism is. The person that you see in the placard is Najib Ahmed. He's a student who has been missing for a year now. He went missing on 15th of October 2016. And the disappearance was not, it was an involuntary disappearance. He was beaten up by a mob of ABVP people. Now, ABVP is the student wing of RSS. RSS is the right-wing Hindutva formation, which wants to turn India into a theocracy, into a Hindu Rashtra, basically. So Najib was beaten up by members of the right wing, and the next morning he went missing. No one could find him afterwards. And it's been 1 year, and we've been holding rallies outside every state investigating agency that is out there, but he's not been found. In fact, not a single clue has been found. So now Najib is clearly the victim here. He was assaulted by a mob and then he went missing. So he's clearly the victim. However, what you see in the mainstream media, I'm just going to bring up a few examples. So before that, I mean, the moment he went missing and we started campaigning, of course, we would post about our campaigns online saying, please join this march, etc., etc. So all the right-wing trolls invariably would write comments on our Facebook posts and our Twitter posts saying, oh, he must have fled to Syria and joined ISIS. Consistent. There is no exception to this. It is consistent. And after several months, I mean, you see the same narrative being reproduced on TV, on mainstream media. I mean, the trolls can say anything, fine. But this is being reproduced in national media. And I'm going to start with the first example, which is Times of India. Times of India is the major English newspaper. I mean, it's the largest circulating English daily. And what you see here, this is the front page clipping. It says, missing JNU students saw IS videos, cops. So clearly what's being insinuated here is that JNU student Najib, he was looking up videos of ISIS, and the cops have said so. And the cops have, gained access to his laptop, his search history, his Google search history has been found. And the night before he went missing, he had seen a YouTube video of some ISIS leader. So this story continues on page 3. This is the front page, and this is the continued story on page 3. And that evening itself, the police comes out with the Delhi police, which was investigating the matter, comes out with a clarification, says that we never sought Najib's search history. We never asked Google to give us Najib's search history. So all of this is false. Now I'm just, I'm not sure if it's possible to enlarge. Okay, but you can see clearly. So I'm just going to read out the police denial. Police deny Najib report. With reference to the report Najib searched for information on IS published in TOI on March 21, it is clarified that investigation conducted so far has not revealed anything to suggest that Najib had accessed any site relating to IS. The report also stated that Delhi police has received a report from Google and YouTube regarding the browsing history of Najib. Neither was any, now this is the interesting bit, neither was any requisition sent to Google or YouTube regarding this, nor any report received in this regard. We have also not submitted any report in this regard to the Delhi High Court. Now this is by Mr. Madhur Verma. He's a police officer who I met, a very well-meaning police officer actually, because usually you don't see these, you don't see the police retracting or the police bothering to clarify. he's a very good officer, Madhur Verma, DCP and PRO of Delhi Police. Now, this thing that you see out here, it was on page 1, and then this continued on page 3. Now, the next day, because it is the PRO of the Delhi Police, so you have to publish it, right? I mean, you can't not publish it. But this little report was published on page 7, where, of course, no one could notice it. And this legitimized, I mean, the next day you can put out, you can put out a minor correction, but it's more like a corrigendum, and no one sort of paid attention to it. And the right wing, of course, was all jubilant because what they had been saying all along was now being said by a mainstream newspaper on its front page. And there was just no apology. I mean, I've been running a petition for a very long time asking them to apologize. We have held protests, but they wouldn't apologize. They have not, forget apologize. They've not even sort of bothered to clarify. I mean, this is a thing that the Delhi Police has written. But Times of India itself did not, based on this clarification, did not stick its neck out to say that, oh, we are sorry. Now the Delhi Police has clarified. They have just, they've just printed Delhi Police's clarification per se. They've not, on their own initiative, made any clarification or apology. And this is what we are looking at. I mean, the victim being portrayed as the aggressor. And, we know all these incidents, or, these incidents are highlighted, or I'm talking about this because these people, both Umar Khalid and Najib, they are JNU students. And JNU is one of the best universities of India, also one that has the strongest student union, and of late been in the national limelight. However, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There may be many such cases where the media pass off innocent Muslim youth as terrorists and, get away with it. And their families, because Muslims are also economically very underprivileged in India, so their families cannot fight it out. I mean, we have not been able to fight it out. We have not been able to extract an apology. And if this is happening to GNU students, which is situated in the heart of the national capital, I mean, we can just imagine what happens elsewhere. And this is really the first time when I saw it live and I saw this happen, so I now know how concrete this is. Again, this is Times Now, which is one of the, one of the major right-wing channels in India right now. If any of you've heard of Arnab Goswami. So Arnab Goswami used to work with Times Now, and now he has started his own hate channel called The Republic TV. So again, I mean, it says the same thing. He browsed ISIS propaganda videos. Najib Ahmed, ISIS sympathizer with a question mark. I mean, of course, no one is going to pay attention to the question mark. It's it's intended as an insinuation. Sources, Najib searched for information on IS. Again, no apology, no clarification. This Amit Malviya he's the social media head of the ruling party, which is the BJP. And when this news came out, this fake news when it came out, he, from his verified Twitter account, he tweets that Najib browsing history suggests he had immersed himself in websites relating to IS, so he adds more masala, if you know what masala is, Indian spices. Arvind Kejriwal must be proud. Now, Arvind Kejriwal is an opposition leader. He has absolutely nothing to do with JNU or with Najib or with anyone. But, I mean, this is how they used to, I mean, they just tag opposition leaders along with it. So this is, this is a textbook example of Islamophobia. Now, I think 5 or 6 days back this happened, or maybe 10 days back. So the person that you see here, this Najib, okay, this is some random Najib from the Indian state of Kerala, who reportedly has joined ISIS. He's apparently sent a text to his mother saying that I am in a happy place now, I have found my purpose, etc., etc. So this guy, Najib, I mean, as you can see, he does bear close resemblance to Najib, but he's clearly not Najib because our Najib is from Uttar Pradesh, and this, which is another Indian state, and this Najib is from Kerala. So clearly, I mean, there is just no ambiguity here. He's some other Najib. However, what you see here is this is a picture of Kanhaiya, the student union president at my time, who was arrested, and that's me. And I don't know why our pictures are being flashed on TV, but that's what is happening. I mean, this is some guy who has joined the ISIS, and the pictures that you see are of JNU students. And I mean, it doesn't say anything. It just says, Najib snared, they look away, ISIS terror trap. It's just the same caption. And again, I mean, nothing is being said here, but a lot is being insinuated, as you would see. So again, I'm saying that, I mean, this is again a cocktail of Islamophobia and McCarthyism, as you can see, because, I mean, Kanhaiya is clearly not Muslim, but he is a leftist. I mean, he's one of the most popular left leaders in India right now, and he's clearly being clubbed along with it, because it's easier, you know, to portray a narrative that all these are anti-India forces, they are out to destroy India, etc., etc. So there's a lot of that happening. Now, I sort of want to move on to hate crimes and how this is happening, but I just wanted to, show these examples to get a sense of how much anti-Muslim hatred is being propagated through media, mainstream media in India at the moment. So, I mean, if we look at two examples in history, I mean, in the Tutsi genocide that took place in Rwanda in 1994 and in the Jewish genocide in Nazi Germany, journalists were convicted and they were punished for inciting violence against the minorities, which in the former case would be Tutsis and in the other case Jews. And that is what is happening in India. I mean, there are media houses that pass off as media houses. There are journalists who pass off as journalists, but who aren't really journalists, and media houses that aren't really media houses. These are just hate outlets. This is very much like the Rwanda hate radio, which would single out targets, which would, you know, incite. Again, I mean, there are several elements which I would quickly want to run through. So the elements of anti-Muslim propaganda in mainstream media include disproportionate focus on religious practices of Muslims. So it's not a critique of religion overall. I mean, yeah, we can have a sociological critique of religion overall, as in what religion does and how religion invents stuff, etc., etc. That would be fine. But this is just Muslims. This focuses on Muslims, on you know, their religious practices, what they eat, how they dress, how they divorce, etc., etc. So there's a disproportionate focus on that. False news linking Muslims to terror cases, two examples of which we just saw. Then media trials. I mean, if there's a case against a Muslim, be it a terror case, be it any case, there will be a, you know, it will be accompanied by a lot of media trial, and the media will sort of pronounce them guilty even before, you know, anything has happened. And I mean, some media houses, they should really just set up a news in their TV studio and they should just hang people live. It's only then that they will be satisfied. I mean, there's clearly a lot of bloodlust that certain media houses are depicting at the moment. And hyphenated citizenship. But I mean, what I really mean by hyphenated citizenship is that anything that I say will be seen as coming from a Muslim. I mean, it could really be, I could be tweeting a song and it will be, oh, you are tweeting this song because so and so, because then, and somehow in some bizarre fashion, it'll be linked to Muslims or to Islam. So that's the thing. I mean, there was someone recently who, so there are, I mean, it's not just trolls. I have a lot of supporters also on social media. There was someone who recently had put out my, sort of compiled my CV from whatever information is there on the public. And he'd written a very interesting post which sort of drew my attention to this fact that had this been the CV of a Hindu, I mean, they would be hailed as a youth icon, etc. But everything that Shehla Rashid is saying is being, you know, sort of qualified by the fact that she's a Muslim. So that's what we are really looking at. I mean, I guess that's what discrimination is all about, because discrimination is about discrimination between equals. And in fact, this comparison of CVs, it has often been used as a methodology in research, when you know, sort of research discrimination in the job sector, for example. It is often in the case of US for comparison between whites and non-whites, and in the case of India between upper caste and so-called lower castes. It has always been used as a research methodology to see how people bearing the exact same CV are discriminated against on the basis of their identity. So that's what's really happening. And I would like to, sorry, I'm just taking too long. Do I have time? So I just want to point out another example. India's vice president now is Venkaiah Naidu, but earlier it was a gentleman named Mr. Hamid Ansari. Now, Mr. Hamid Ansari recently finished his term, and our Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, he made a very below-the-belt remark about Mr. Hamid Ansari from the floor of the Parliament, saying that, I would like to sort of summarize some bits of the comment that he made at Hamid Ansari. So Narendra Modi says that you, Mr. Hamid Ansari, you have been brought up in a certain kind of setup, and you have served in certain kinds of countries, which would basically mean Muslim countries, and you have been following a certain ideology, but you have been constrained by the constitution. But now that your term is over, you are free to pursue your calling or your whatever core ideology is. Now, to put things in context, Hamid Ansari, I mean, he is from India's Congress Party, which is, you can critique its practice of secularism, etc., etc. I mean, it's not beyond critique, but it's an avowedly secular party. I mean, it has some commitment to secularism. And Mr. Narendra Modi is from BJP, which is an avowedly communal party. Now, here's a Hindu who is committed to a communal politics, telling a Muslim who is committed to a secular politics that he is from a certain ideology, he is from a certain mindset. Sorry, I would just like to sort of summarize what I'm trying to say, because this is a finer point that we don't often think about. Whatever Mr. Hamid Ansari says or does, it is qualified by the fact that he's a Muslim. And even though Hamid Ansari belongs to a secular party, quote unquote, avowedly secular party, and even though our Prime Minister belongs to an avowedly communal party, he is committed to a communal polity, whereas Hamid Ansari is committed to a secular politics. Hamid Ansari is being told that you are of a certain mindset, you've served in a certain kind of countries, you've been brought up in a certain kind of mindset, but, so even if you become the Vice President of India, you are still a Muslim Vice President. But if you are from a Hindu nationalist party, you're the Prime Minister, you're just a Prime Minister, you're not a Hindu Prime Minister. So that's what I mean by hyphenated citizenship, really, that the status quo never has a name. The majoritarian religion or ideology never has a name, whereas a name will always be assigned to the, even if a Dalit were to become the president or the vice president, he will always be called a Dalit president, a Dalit vice chancellor. There are no Dalit vice chancellors, just for your information. So he will always be called like that. Whereas, it's the same thing as women, as what happens with women. So if you're a woman and you become the president, you are the woman president. Whereas if you're a male and you become the president, you are just the president. So that's what I mean by hyphenated citizenship. And mainstream media does this all the time. They engage in this kind of labeling all the time. There could be several examples, but that could form the subject matter of a research paper in itself. So the next point is reproducing tropes from RSS literature, organizer, etc. So I can't say today that all of these tropes against the Muslims, they have been invented by the mainstream media. No, they have not been invented by the mainstream media. They have been invented by RSS literature. RSS, mouthpiece organizer has for the longest time, and Professor Zoya Hassan, if some of you are interested, Professor Zoya Hassan, who is again from JNU, she's documented this, and she's done a lot of research on how the mouthpiece of RSS, which is the organizer, would over time, caricature Muslims as, it's a combination of things. So sex is one trope that is used. They are portrayed as depraved, sex-crazed creatures. Meat eating, which is again, there's in the mind of the Hindutva right wing, there's a strange equivalence between meat and sex and guilt. So it's a cocktail. So that's the kind of caricaturing that Muslims have always been subjected to in RSS literature. But now the thing is, these things are being reproduced in the mainstream media. So I'm not at all suggesting that this is invented by mainstream media. It's just being reproduced and echoed by the mainstream media. Exclusive usage of the term terrorist for Muslims. Of course, I don't think I need to elaborate this point, frankly. Discussions on Muslim issues deemed communal. Oh yeah, this is interesting now. If you as a Muslim were to raise issues of institutional discrimination, or if you were to raise issues of mob lynching, if you were to raise issues of targeted anti-Muslim violence, you will be deemed as communal. And you'll be asked not to communalize the issue, whereas the issue is, it is already communal. But if you were to talk about it, so talking about it, say talking about Gujarat riots, talking about the 2002 genocide of Muslims in Gujarat, which was then ruled by our now Prime Minister Narendra Modi, it will be deemed communal. So that's a very problematic usage of the phrase because what is communal really? Talking about communalism and highlighting communalism is communal. That's really bizarre. Now, yeah, but what I've pointed out just now is the role of media in sort of making lynching justifiable, or making hate crimes justifiable. I mean, you reduce a community, you demonize a community so much. I mean, the phrase used in the Tutsi genocide by some of the media houses, which are collectively known as the hate radio, was cockroaches, that these are cockroaches. That's the kind of phrase that was used. And similarly, in the Jewish genocide, there were many such terms and many such caricatures that were used for Jews. Sweaty pig being one of the descriptions that was used to describe them. There are these tropes which help you to create a second-class citizenship status or a stigmatized identity for one particular community, and then that is used to justify the genocide, that is used to justify the hate crimes against one community. Professor Hatem Bazian talked about mob lynching in India. That's I'm sure you guys have heard about the recent protests that happened in India called Not in My Name. I guess this was a very significant point when the society really acknowledged this kind of violence and disowned it. I think that was a very proud moment for all of us, that this is actually being talked about, because generally these things, because it's happening in a so-called spontaneous way, it never gets taken note of. And in a sense, the people in this sense were the people in this particular instance were ahead of media in taking note of the situation. So the media would continuously downplay it and say that, oh, this is not organized, this is spontaneous, this has some other context, this has some other context. But people actually came forward, common people, they actually came forward and recognized it as a crime. And when it was, at a time when it was impossible for activists on TV to say Muslims are being killed, you couldn't really say Muslims are being killed. At that time, common people, non-Muslims, they flooded the streets and said Muslims are being killed and please don't do it in our name. I am a Hindu and please don't kill Muslims in my name. I am a vegetarian and please don't kill Muslims in my name. So vegetarianism is against, again, one trope which is, used, which is very vigorously mobilized at the moment to demonize Muslims and justify hate crimes against them. So what you see, I mean, the picture that you see here, this person with his hands folded is Mahesh Sharma. He is the Union Minister for Culture right now in Indian government. And the person that you see here, the corpse that you see here, is of Ravi Sisodia. Now, who is Ravi Sisodia? Ravi Sisodia is one of the accused in the Dadri lynching case. I don't know how many of you have heard of it. So in Dadri, after Narendra Modi came to power, there was a man called Mohammed Akhlaq. He was lynched in his house because some people just barged into his home and said that he has beef in his fridge. So he was dragged out of his house. Danish, his other son, was also very brutally beaten, but Danish survived the attack, but Akhlaq did not survive the attack. So the incident, somehow it sparked a lot of outrage in international media as well, and that's how Indian media started taking note of it, because when it became a news in international media, then our media started highlighting it. So this is known as the Dadri lynching case. Now, around 60 people attacked Mohammed Akhlaq. Out of those, 12 people were arrested. And even as they were arrested, they were arrested under a lot of public pressure and international scrutiny. But there were people, say Sangeet Som, for example, he's one BJP leader, who was continuously campaigning for their release. And he kept saying that, we won't allow our boys to be falsely framed, we won't allow our boys to be incarcerated, etc., etc. And the interesting bit is that while the BJP and all of its allied organs, all these outfits that are offshoots of the Sangh Parivar, while they go on and on about beef, people should not eat beef, people should not kill the cow, people should worship the cow, etc., etc., Sangeet Som, the BJP leader who was campaigning for the release of these people, for the lynching accused, he owns a meat export company where they export everything. I mean, in a sense, going back to the usage of the term economic ideologies of hate, this is also a campaign to terrorize and monopolize. I mean, this is also a campaign to throw out the smaller players, which is basically Dalits and Muslims, like the poor dairy farmers of India, to throw them out of the business and have all these big chains export meat, because India is the biggest exporter of beef. Who is exporting these beef? Who are the people who have control over the export of beef? I mean, this is clearly not Muslims, because Muslims are operating at a very lower level in the economic food chain in a sense, and it's all the so-called upper caste and Jains who do not eat meat as a thumb rule. They are in the export business. So it's also it has much deeper implications. Of course, it is Islamophobia, and of course it's a hate crime against Muslims, but it also has economic implications for the ruling party members. So now, Ravi Sisodia, one of the 12 persons who were arrested in the case, he died in custody. So we are told to believe that he died because he caught some fever, dengue fever. I don't know how much of that is true, because I don't trust anything that the state says. But anyway, this person he died in custody, and Mahesh Sharma, the Union Minister for Culture, paid homage to him. This is Mahesh Sharma in the village Bisada paying homage to the lynching accused. And this, what you see here, is the Indian tricolor. It's our flag. And the body of Ravi Sisodia is wrapped in an Indian flag. And this is illegal, and it could attract the Flag Act. Besides that, I mean, it's wrong on many levels, but let me not even go there. Let me not even go how wrong it is politically, emotionally, ethically. But it is just plain wrong in terms of sheer law. I mean, this could attract the Flag Act, because this, wrapping the tricolor over someone's body is a rare honor which is reserved for soldiers who die at the border. I mean, who die guarding the border, who die in combat. It is reserved for those martyrs. But here you have the tricolor draped over the body of a lynching accused. So what are we really saying? And BJP, the ruling party, of which Sangeet Som and Narendra Modi and this person Mahesh Sharma, they are all a part of BJP. It keeps going on and on about, oh, nationalism. We are the self-proclaimed protectors of nationalism, and they do a lot of politics in the name of soldiers. But an important point to sort of point out here is that Mohammad Akhlaq, the person who was lynched, his son is a soldier. His son is a proud Indian soldier, Sartaj. I mean, he doesn't talk to the media because he doesn't want to defame the country, because that is what amounting. I mean, even me talking to you is defaming the country. All the fame that all these lynching accused and lynching supporters have earned for our country, I am undoing all of that fame by speaking to you guys. So yeah, this will also be made into an issue that I defame the country abroad. So now, here is a father of an Indian soldier who has been lynched, and one of the accused in the case is being given state funeral. This is what we are looking at, and I mean, this is the hypocrisy of the whole nationalism and all the people who do politics in the name of nationalism in India. Now, so there are no statistics available for the crime mob lynching, because mob lynching is not defined per se, and National Crime Records Bureau of India does not collect statistics under this head. However, in the campaign that we launched, the national campaign against mob lynching that we launched, like one of our demands, like there were several demands. One of the key demands is that there should be a legislation against mob lynching. It should be recognized as a specific hate crime, and there should be a legislation to stop mob lynching. And one of the demands, I mean, actually you guys could help us spread the word about the petition, and some of you could also sign the petition. It's a petition by Swara Bhaskar, who is an Indian actor. She's a Bollywood actor and very committed to the cause of secularism and social justice. So she started the petition, and one of the demands in the petition was that mob lynching should be defined as a specific crime, and that the National Crime Records Bureau should collect data under this head. So this demand has been met, and from now on, the NCRB is actually going to collate data under this head. So as of now, we don't have actual statistics, but in the future, I mean, let's hope we don't get to a point where we need statistics, but as a matter of fact, we need statistics. So as per the news reports from 2010 to 2017, there were 50 in all the beef-related lynchings. 51% of the cases Muslims were the targets, and 86% of the victims were Muslims. 97% of the incidents happened after Mr. Narendra Modi came to power in 2014. 52% were based on rumors. So in the case of Mohammed Akhlaq. We still don't know whether the meat in his fridge was beef or mutton. We still don't know, but the man is dead already and the family is ruined. But we still don't know whether it was beef or mutton or anything. So much of this is also like based just on rumors. So I could spread a rumor that this person has beef in their fridge and just lynch them. I mean, that's what it has come to. From January to June 2017, which was the first 6 months of this year, there were 20 cow-related attacks. And you know what I also, what to point out is that there was another case. Some of these are related to beef, some of these are not related to beef. But in some of the cases, the victim is just Muslim, and that's just enough. I mean, there was one incident on a train where a person named Junaid, he was just killed. You know, he didn't have any beef, didn't have anything. Just a 15-year-old boy who was killed. Now there's this Zafar lynching case. So in Zafar lynching case, what happened was this person named Zafar, he lived in Rajasthan. He was trying to stop government officials from filming women who were urinating in the open. So this open defecation is a huge issue in India, and we are talking about an area where there isn't the public sanitation and all of that. That's not very good. So people are they are driven by their circumstances. They are forced to sort of defecate in the open. And the government officials, in the name of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's Swachh Bharat campaign, Clean India campaign, what they were doing is they were filming these women on a handheld video camera while they were defecating, while they were urinating. So this man Zafar tried to stop the government officials, saying that you can't do this, you can't film women while they are peeing. And he was lynched by government officials. So now, you could make a difference, you could make a sort of distinction between state and non-state, but here everything is so much merged, it is so ambivalent, it's also ambiguous, that you can't help but say that the state is actually, these are state-backed lynchings after all. These Gau Rakshak, so the term Gau Rakshak means cow protector, which is just a benign and a very dignified term for actually these violent groups which are engaging in all these lynchings. Now what is also happening, what's really happening here is that these people who are killing in the name of cow or in the name of anything, they're not professional killers, they're not serial murderers. These are innocent people. This is you and me being turned into murderers by an overall atmosphere of hatred. All these people who lynch other people, they have no criminal record in most of the cases. They are just common. They are your neighbors. They are your co-passengers on a train. And they are being turned into criminals by the hate campaigns that this government and its cheerleader media are driving. That's what we are looking at. And these are unemployed people who form part of, who are made to form these Gau Rakshak Dals, so it basically means a cow protection committee. And rather than sort of talking about employment and education and any of those things, the government is just happy with these guys killing each other, with the population being pitted against each other. Wherever we go, there are representatives of the state and the intelligence agencies, who then report to the government back home how we are engaging in anti-national activities abroad. So when I went to London and spoke about the issue of mob lynching, the mainstream channel called Times Now did a show on it afterwards, saying how I defamed India abroad. But however, I want to say, and I want to say this to whoever is the IB agent over here, that it's not the lynchings that make us proud. What make us proud as Indian citizens is these people who return their awards in protest against lynchings. These are the people we are proud of, and this is the India that we would like to identify with. And we are often told that you defame the country, you are anti-national, you don't care about our country's image. We are proud of our country because of people like this, writers and filmmakers who have returned their national awards in protest against beef lynchings. That's what we are proud of. We are not proud of the country, regardless of what it does. So this award Vapsi, which is the spree of award returning, it also coincided with the murders of rationalists, and it also coincided with a lot of institutional changes that were being brought in the country and general atmosphere of Islamophobia and anti-intellectualism. The civilian action that, it's quite notable. First was the Una mass agitation. So Una is a place in Gujarat, which is the home state of Mr. Narendra Modi. It's not just Muslims who are targeted there, it's also Dalits. So Dalits are the so-called lower castes or ex-untouchables. So they were, Dalits were flogged in public. 4 Dalits were flogged in public because they were accused of slaughtering a cow, whereas what they were really doing is they were removing the dead carcasses of cows. So the scavenging, basically, scavenging activities. Now, this is a community that has, intergenerationally engaged in this work because the so-called upper castes won't do it. So this is the social division of labor in our society. And these people are, they are perpetually tasked with removing the, dirt and removing the dead carcasses. And while they were doing that, they were flogged in public because they were accused of slaughtering cows. And, what's interesting is that the people who are doing this, the people who are engaging in all these floggings and lynchings, they themselves make these videos where they film it and they put it online for everyone to see. So that's how technology doesn't liberate us. The next step could be a live streamed public lynching on Facebook, God forbid. So these people, they put out these videos, but how it helped was it generated a lot of outrage. So people across the country were very shocked. And Dalits and Muslims in Una and many other progressive people, who may not necessarily be Dalit and Muslim, they joined them, and there was a huge mass agitation of about 20,000 people who marched across the streets of Gujarat and said, we won't do this. And the Dalits in Una, they took a pledge saying that no matter what happens now, we will not engage in manual scavenging activities. We will not engage in removing dead carcasses. And in a very revolutionary act, what they did was they dumped the dead carcasses of cows in front of the district magistrate's office, saying that if this is your mother, please take care of her in death as you do take care of her in, while she's alive. That because the running narrative is that it's an upper caste narrative to say that the cow is our mother. It has economic implications because India is a primarily farming agricultural society. But if she is your mother, this is what the Dalits were saying, that please take care of her when she's dead. Once she's dead, then you need us to clean her, dead body, to clean her carcass, and then she's not your mother anymore. So this was a very revolutionary protest. There was the National Campaign Against Mob Lynching, which we started, which basically demanded a legislation against mob lynching. There was the black band protests by Muslims on Eid this year. On Eid they wore black bands on their wrists. There was the Not in My Name, which again was a civilian action, very much spontaneous, and it was huge. Indians across 20 countries, I guess, got together and said that, please don't carry out all of this in our name. So we've been demanding for an anti-lynching law on the lines of the dire anti-lynching bill, which was proposed here in the US. So that's what this whole thing is about. That's the situation that we are looking at, and I'd like to end my presentation with that. Thank you.